A shocking truth hides beneath the blood and chaos of Gen V Season 2. These first 4 episodes aren't just about new powers or wild battles. They secretly connect back to the boys in ways that change everything we thought we knew about Vought the Seven, and even Homelander's twisted empire. If you blink, you'll miss the subtle hints buried in the background, the news reports, and even the small conversations. But don't worry, we're going to break down every detail, every Easter egg, and every sneaky reference that ties Gen V directly into the larger universe of the boys. The opening of Gen V Season 2 doesn't waste a single moment. It picks up right where Season 1 left off, in the aftermath of chaos at Godolkin University, where young supes discovered that their lives were nothing more than a controlled experiment run by Vought. The explosive finale showed us just how far Vought would go to manipulate the next generation of superheroes, and Season 2 dives even deeper into this dark truth right away. The story sets a darker, more paranoid tone. The characters are no longer just trying to prove themselves as heroes in training. They're now forced to question everything they've been told about their school, their powers, and even their purpose in society. Behind every lecture, every training session, and every staged heroic moment, Vought is pulling strings for its own benefit. And that's the first major connection back to the boys. Just like with the Seven, Vought treats the students as products, not people. They are valuable only as long as they can be marketed, controlled, and exploited. In episodes 1 through 4, we see this theme play out in small but telling details. For example, there are posters and commercials around campus that promote the idea of trusting Vought. This is the same kind of branding we saw in The Boys with Homelander and Starlight slick, polished PR campaigns designed to distract the public from the ugly reality behind the scenes. Even the way faculty members talk to the students feels rehearsed, like they're reading from a script written by Vought's PR department. This subtle world-building reminds us that the corporation is the true villain. Not just any single supe, the characters themselves also reveal the impact of this control. Some of them are desperate for fame and cling to the promise of being chosen by Vought for bigger opportunities, echoing how a Train or the Deep desperately try to hold on to their spots in the Seven. Others, however, are beginning to see through the lies. They're questioning whether being a hero in this world actually means saving people, or just playing a role for cameras while the real damage is hidden away. This tension between ambition and truth creates the central conflict of the season. At the same time, the show never forgets its roots in the boys' universe. From the very first episode, we get references to events happening outside of Godolkin. News clips talk about the Seven, interviews mention Homelander's latest controversial speech, and small throwaway lines point to the chaos in the wider world. These details remind us that Gen V isn't a side story, it's running parallel to the boys and building towards something bigger. The most powerful element of this introduction, though, is how it uses tone. The music, the pacing, and even the lighting of scenes feel heavier compared to Season 1. There's a sense that no one is safe, that at any moment the mask could slip and the students could see just how disposable they really are. In this way, Gen V mirrors the DNA of the boys. It's not about heroes saving the day. It's about the cost of power, the corruption of institutions, and the horrifying truth that those in charge will sacrifice anyone to maintain control. By the end of episode 1, viewers already sense that Season 2 is less about training and more about survival. The groundwork is being laid for betrayals, shocking reveals, and connections to Vought's bigger plans. The introduction makes it clear these students aren't just characters in a spin-off. They are pawns in the same dangerous game that Homelander, Butcher, and Starlight are fighting in the main series. And if episodes 1 through 4 are any indication, their choices could change the entire direction of the boys' universe. Episode 1, The Spark of Distrust. The season begins by throwing us straight back into the fallout of Season 1's ending. Godolkin University, once a symbol of youthful ambition and superhero dreams, is now a breeding ground of fear and paranoia. Episode 1 immediately sets the stage with a chilling reminder. Vought controls every piece of information that reaches the outside world. The media reports a polished version of the previous season's chaos, but within the school, the students whisper about experiments, disappearances, and cover-ups. This dual reality mirrors what we saw in The Boys, the way Vought carefully edits Homelander's public image while hiding his atrocities. The first episode's most important Easter egg comes in a subtle news ticker referencing Homelander's ongoing trial of public opinion. It's not a full story, but enough to remind us that events in The Boys are happening in real time alongside this spin-off. The emotional core of this episode is trust or the lack of it. Friends no longer know who to rely on. Teachers act more like handlers than mentors. And the students realize that every decision they make is being watched, recorded, and scored. This theme connects perfectly with the broader The Boys universe, the illusion of choice while the system quietly scripts every move. Episode 2. Cracks in the facade. By the second episode, paranoia turns into action. Students start digging deeper into the lies they've been told. Small groups form secret alliances to uncover the truth about the woods, the underground lab where Vought ran horrifying experiments. We see parallels here to The Boys Season 1, when Huey, Frenchie, and Butcher had to piece together the truth about Compound V. The big Easter egg in this episode is a direct nod to Starlight. A student idolizes her and has posters of her speeches about freedom and truth. But in a clever twist, the show undercuts that idealism by showing how even Starlight's message is filtered through Vaught's media machine. For fans of The Boys, this moment highlights the ongoing struggle between authentic heroism and corporate branding. Narratively, Episode 2 pushes characters to make difficult choices. Do they risk exposure to learn the truth? Or do they keep their heads down and hope to be chosen as Vaught's next stars? The tension grows, and it's clear someone will eventually pay the price for pushing too far. Episode 3, Shadows of Power. Episode 3 is where the season begins to lean heavily into horror. Students uncover new layers of Vaught's manipulation, discovering files that prove some of them were selected as children not for their potential, but for their weaknesses. This is one of the darkest revelations so far. It shows that Vought never cared about nurturing greatness. Instead, it sought control, planting the seeds of fear and dependency. The Easter egg here is a chilling one. One of the lab files casually mentions Stormfront protocol. While the show doesn't linger on it, fans of The Boys know exactly what that means. It's a reminder of Vaught's long history of eugenics, experiments, and its ties to darker ideologies. This quiet reference connects the suffering of these young supes to the larger, sinister history of the company. Cinematically, this episode uses shadows and silence to increase tension. Hallways feel longer, rooms darker, and conversations sharper. By the end, one of the students betrays their friends, delivering information straight to Vought in exchange for a promise of fame. This betrayal mirrors the constant backstabbing in The Boys, where ambition often outweighs morality. Episode 4, Blood and Consequences. The fourth episode serves as the mid-season turning point. Everything boils over. Alliances collapse, secrets spill out, and the cost of digging too deep becomes painfully clear. The climax of this episode involves a brutal fight between students, not staged for training but raw and deadly. The aftermath leaves the survivors shaken, questioning whether they're any different from the monsters Vought accuses them of being. The key Easter egg here is an offhand comment from a faculty member about Homelander's growing instability. While the students don't grasp the weight of it, fans of The Boys instantly recognize the foreshadowing. It suggests that the chaos at Godolkin isn't isolated, it's connected to the larger storm building in the main series. By the end of Episode 4, the show makes one thing clear: survival at Godolkin isn't about grades, tests, or PR approval. It's about navigating a system designed to break them. Every character faces a choice: fight, submit, or risk disappearing into the same shadows that swallowed countless others. This mid-season climax perfectly balances personal stakes with the looming presence of Vought, reminding us that these young heroes in training are just another generation of pawns in a corporate war machine. Asterisk. One of the most thrilling parts of watching Gen V Season 2 is spotting the countless nods to The Boys. These aren't just throwaway details. They're breadcrumbs that remind us how tightly these two shows are woven together. Every poster, news report, and hushed conversation is a clue that the world outside, Godolkin University, is on fire and that these students are tangled in the same web of lies, power, and propaganda. Let's unpack the biggest Easter eggs and references hidden across episodes 1 to 4. The presence of the Seven throughout the early episodes, the shadow of the Seven looms large. Homelander is never far from the conversation, even when he isn't on screen. In episode 1, a muted news broadcast debates whether Homelander's latest violent outburst should be considered self-defense or a war crime. This is a direct parallel to the way the public in The Boys constantly wrestles with his actions, no matter how heinous they are. For viewers, it's a reminder, while Godolkin students are fighting to survive school politics, the larger world is already caught in the storm of Homelander's madness. Starlight also gets a clever reference. In episode 2, one student has her iconic "Shine the Light" poster on their dorm wall. But the irony is clear: the poster is sold through Vought's online store, showing that even Starlight's rebellion has been commodified. It's the same trick Vought always plays: turn rebellion into branding and sell it back to the masses. For fans of The Boys, this moment adds depth, because it shows just how impossible it is to escape Vought's grip, the corporate fingerprints of Vought Easter eggs aren't always about characters, they're often in the branding. Episodes 1 through 4 are littered with background details that connect Godolkin's culture to Vought's larger empire. Ads for Vought soda and energy drinks are plastered across vending machines. Training facilities are sponsored by subsidiary brands, much like the Seven's headquarters in The Boys is covered in product placements. Even the classrooms feel less like spaces for learning and more like PR stages, with giant Vought logos hanging over the students like silent threats. In episode 3, a minor scene shows a student scrolling through Vought News Network, VNN, on their phone. The ticker at the bottom casually references Ashley Barrett, Vaught's PR director, who we know from The Boys. She's managing new messaging strategies after Homelander's controversial speech. This tiny detail ties the timelines together and shows that the chaos in the main series is directly influencing how Vought is controlling Godolkins. Students, historical echoes, Stormfront, and Compound V. Episode 3 delivers perhaps the darkest Easter egg so far. When students hack into restricted files from the woods, one of the documents briefly flashes Stormfront Protocol for casual viewers. It may seem like just another codename, but fans know this is a direct callback to Stormfront, the Nazi supe who played a major role in The Boys. Season 2. This reference confirms that Vaught's roots in eugenics and experimentation are alive and well, infecting not just the past but the present training of young supes. There's also a deeper callback to Compound V. Students uncover research papers that suggest Vought has been quietly altering the formula for next-gen supes, testing it on Godolkin students. This ties directly back to The Boys' revelations that every supe was artificially created through injections as children. In Gen V, the experiments are more brutal, pushing boundaries not for stability, but for control. It's a terrifying reminder that the corporate machine never stopped innovating, it only became more ruthless. Thematic mirrors to The Boys. Not every Easter egg is visual. Some are thematic. In episodes 1 to 4, the parallels between the students and the Seven are unmistakable. There's the supe who craves fame at any cost, mirroring a train's desperation to stay relevant. Another hides insecurity behind arrogance, much like the deep, and then there are the rare ones who still believe in genuine heroism, echoing Starlight's lonely fight against corruption. These mirrors aren't coincidences, they're deliberate storytelling choices meant to show that history is repeating itself. Godolkin isn't producing heroes. It's producing the next generation of puppets for Vought. Episode 4 drives this theme home with a faculty member muttering about Homelander's instability. The line feels small, but it's a crack of thunder in the background. Just like in The Boys, everyone at Vought knows the truth but chooses silence to protect their careers. This hypocrisy is one of the strongest connections between the two shows, proving that corruption doesn't stop with the Seven, it infects every corner of Vaught's empire. Why these Easter eggs matter? These references aren't just fun nods for fans. They serve a deeper purpose. They remind us that Gen V isn't a side story running in isolation, it's an essential piece of the larger puzzle. Every Easter egg, from a casual product placement to a terrifying lab file, builds the sense that Godolkin students aren't just fighting their own battles. They're unknowingly being shaped into weapons that will feed directly into the chaos of the boys. Episodes 1 to 4 make this clear. The walls of Godolkin may seem closed, but the echoes of Homelander, Starlight, Stormfront, and Vought's endless lies reverberate through every hallway. These connections not only reward eagle-eyed fans, but also set the stage for the eventual collision between the two shows. Asterisk. By the time we reach the end of Episode 4, Gen V Season 2 has already pulled us into a darker and more dangerous world than Season 1 ever hinted at. The tone is heavier, the stakes are higher, and every Easter egg whispers that the walls separating Gen V from the boys are about to collapse. But what does this mid-season setup really mean for the rest of the show and for the larger universe? Let's break down the possibilities, the fan theories, and the bigger picture that these 4 episodes are teasing, the future of Godolkin students. One of the biggest questions hanging over the season is whether any of these young supes can actually escape Vought's grasp. We've already seen how the company manipulates its students the same way it manipulates the Seven. By Episode 4, it's clear that some students will do anything for fame and protection, while others are willing to risk everything for the truth. This split sets the stage for an eventual war within the group itself. Fan theory suggests that at least one of these students could eventually be drafted into the Seven, filling a spot left open by the Deep or a train. If that happens, it won't just be a cameo, it'll prove that Godolkin has been Vought's secret recruitment program all along, possible crossovers with the boys. The Easter eggs sprinkled through these episodes all point to one possibility: a crossover is coming. Homelander's instability, Starlight's commodified rebellion, and Stormfront's legacy all bleed into the events at Godolkin. Fans are already speculating that Billy Butcher or even Huey might make an appearance before the season ends, perhaps investigating the experiments at the Woods. Another theory suggests that Godolkin's most unstable students could be unleashed into the wider world, forcing the boys themselves to intervene. If this happens, Gen V won't just be a spin-off, it'll become a direct pipeline feeding into the next season of The Boys. The return of Stormfront's ideology. That single flash of Stormfront protocol in Episode 3 has fueled endless discussion online. Some fans believe it's foreshadowing a new generation of supes bred not just for power, but for ideology. Vought has always thrived on manipulation, and reviving Stormfront's vision of a pure, superhuman race could be their next play. Imagine the horror if Godolkin is less about training heroes and more about quietly testing which students can be molded into soldiers for a new world order. This theory adds a terrifying layer to the show because it suggests that the students aren't just pawns. They're experiments in a much larger ideological war. The Homelander factor. No theory feels complete without Homelander. The faculty's muttered concern about his instability in Episode 4 may seem small, but it could foreshadow a direct collision. Some fans predict that Homelander himself might appear later this season, either to mentor Godolkin's top students or to remind them that the Seven are untouchable. Others believe that his presence will be more indirect, that his growing madness in the boys will spill over, forcing Vought to accelerate its plans at Godolkin. Either way, the seeds planted in these episodes suggest that the students' lives are deeply entangled with Homelander's downfall, the bigger picture. What episodes 1 to 4 really set up taken together? The first 4 episodes act as a prologue to something much larger. They introduce paranoia, betrayal, and corruption on a smaller scale, but always with echoes of the main series. The fights between students mirror the infighting of the Seven. The staged PR moments reflect the propaganda machine that controls the entire country. And the betrayals remind us that in this universe, morality rarely survives ambition. These episodes aren't just building the story of Godolkin, they're building the next chapter of The Boys for fans. The theories are endless. Will one of the students rise up as a true hero, breaking free from Vought's control? Or will they all fall into the same cycle of corruption that traps the Seven? Could the boys themselves show up to shut down the woods once and for all? Or is Vought playing an even longer game, preparing these students for battles we can't yet imagine? Final thoughts: the brilliance of Gen V Season 2 Episodes 1-4 lies in how they balance personal stakes with world-shaking consequences. On the surface, it's about students struggling to survive a brutal system. But in the shadows, it's about Vought's relentless grip tightening across every corner of this universe. The Easter eggs aren't just fun details, they're warnings. Warnings that Godolkin isn't a safe haven, that the students aren't free, and that the nightmare of the boys is far from over. So as we look ahead to the rest of the season, one thing is clear: these episodes have only scratched the surface. The true darkness is yet to come, and if the fan theories are right, it's going to tie directly into the chaos of the boys. The question isn't whether these worlds will collide, it's how much blood will be spilled when they finally do.